In this video, I'm doing part 2 of a commentary on a match between Masayuki Mochizuki, and Steve Sax. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe and you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, what you'd like to see in future videos, and I'll work on that. So this is part 2. Part 1 was in a separate video. This is the Masters Jackpot round of 32 at the Las Vegas Open 2022. We're starting, this is a 15-point match, and Steve is ahead 3-2 out of 15, so 12 away, 13 away. Steve is playing the white checkers at the bottom. Mochi is playing the black checkers at the top. They're actually green, but they look black on the stream. They're playing on the beautiful Backgammon Galaxy Earth board. I'll put a link in the description there. And you can see the board as well as the names of the players at the top and bottom, along with the pip counts and their scores at the upper right and lower right. The player cams are visible on the upper left and lower left, and the clock is on the left side. And my cam is to the left, and I made the dice a little bit bigger so you can see them, and the XG feed is on the left so you can see the analysis while we're doing the video. So now, Mochi rolls a 5-3. Just plays 13-8, 6-3. (6-5) for Steve. He brings one down and continues to make his board. Steve doesn't have an anchor. He wants to hold. He's behind in the race. Now Mochi rolls a 5-4. So he just wants to play safe. He's ahead in the race. They are using a baffle box. Steve rolls a 6-5. So what are the options? Of course, he wants to stay back and maintain the contact with a 20 pip racing deficit. It will be 9 pips after the play, so he can play 2 on both on his side of the board by making the 2 point. That does make the deeper point the 2 point before having made the 4 point. You do prefer to make the 4 point first before making the next point. Doing that does allow him to retain his midpoint, but it is slightly better to just break the midpoint as it's not serving all that much benefit at the moment. So he does, and Mochi rolls a 4-2. So what can he play with 4-2? He'd like to bring one down from his midpoint. However, that does leave 5 shots for Steve. 6-3 and 5-4, actually 4 shots. So he doesn't want to risk that. He just plays safely behind. And now 6 rolls. Steve does roll a 6-3, which would have been able to hit, but now he makes his board. You see he made his 4 point, and then he slotted the next point. Now with the double 3, so he can play all the way down, but he wants to make his 5 point. And then he doesn't really want to make his 10 point because that's the 0.6 away from the anchor, which means it's going to be harder to clear, but he has no choice. Now with the 5-4, he just makes his 4 point, slots the next point, and keeps 2 6s. So now Mochi is counting the race. He is up by 18 pips before the play. So he is looking at possibly doubling. It looks like it's a small double, but a comfortable take. What does make it a take is the racing lead is only 9 pips. So if it were a straight race, it would be a take anyway. And Steve does have a strong board. Mochi does have his 10 point, which is the hardest point to clear because it's 6 away from the anchor. And there's a gap on the 9 point. That's 1 fewer landing spot that he can use to clear the checkers on his 10 point. And Steve does have a strong board. However, soon it will get a little bit weaker. He does decide to roll, and he rolls a 3-1. So he can clear one of his points. He can play 6-2. If he plays 6-2, now everything is stripped. That leaves him in an awkward position. Alternatively, he can break the 8 point. It does make it a little harder to safety those two checkers, bring those two checkers home on the 10 point. However, with the spare checkers on the 5, 6, and 7, that provides Mochi with a little bit of flexibility to be able to do that. So now Steve makes his board, but now he's running out of time. Mochi rolls a 4-1, so he makes his 2 point with 3-2, and then he's going to decide on the 4. And the 7-2 is what he does because Steve is running out of time. So if he rolls a 6-4 or 6-5, he's going to have to run. So he does roll a 4-2. He's able to play on his side. Now Mochi rolls a 5-1. So he plays 6-1, and the ace doesn't matter between 3-2 and 2-1. Now 5-4 for Steve. So now he has some options. This is where Steve takes a picture. He takes a lot of pictures. He can bring 2 out. That's called the double falcon. However, now that he has a blot in his board, it's not good. He counts pips faster than almost anyone I know. People say I count fast. He counts faster than I do. So he's looking at the running play, which is correct by XG. Now that he's broken the board, coming out is not as safe. Coming out with 2 checkers, the double falcon, is not as safe. If you want to learn about that double falcon play, I recommend reading Back Checker Strategy by Michihito Kageyama. He has some outstanding books, and that's one of them. He has 2 other great ones called Opening Concepts and Endgame Technique, and he's working on another one about the 5-point match, which I'm excited to read. So Steve is down 10 pips before, and he'll be down by only 1 after. So he's looking at this play. Each player does have a blot and board. So Steve has a blot on his 6 point. Mochi has a blot on the 1 point. It's much better to have a blot on the 1 point than on the 6 point, because if you come in and hit, you're escaped when you're on the 6 point. But if you come in and hit on the 1 point, you still have to jump a prime, which is challenging. So he's basically thinking about what are the numbers that are good and what are the numbers that are bad. This is something I look at when I study plays. I use the dice distribution tool to see what are the next rolls that are good for my opponent and what are the next rolls that are bad for my opponent. And based on that, you know what to play. And then you want to consider the rolls after that that are good for you and bad for you. So that's the second level of play of the analysis. Now, Mochi is looking at possibly doubling. You see it as a strong double, but now it's a comfortable take. So you want to see the race, of course. Mochi has a slight lead in the race, so based on that, it's not really a double. However, he's close to bringing him home. He has 4 crossovers to bring his checkers home. Steve also has 1, 2, 3, 4 crossovers, but they're bigger crossovers to start bearing off. And then in terms of the bear off, Mochi has a slightly better bear off board because Steve has those deep points, the blot on the 6 point. But also look at the rolls. So Mochi has some rolls that can point on head, such as 6-3, 6-1, 3-1, double 1, double 3, double 6. Those are all good rolls. So you think about the good rolls, some of the bad rolls. They're also pick and pass rolls. Now with a 4-2. So Mochi doubles, Steve takes, Mochi rolls a 4-2. So he can hit. That does put a checker on the bar. However, it does leave 20 numbers to hit back. And although Steve does have a blot on his 6 point, he still has a 5-point board. This is the best play. It's just safe by XG. He finds it. Mochi almost always finds the best plays. You learn a lot by watching these two players. So 6-2 for Steve. He makes his board and plays the other checker inside, which is not ideal for the bear off. Now 5-2. So something's got to give here. He's going to play like that. Now Steve needs a 4 to hit, or a large 6 like a 6-5 or double 6 will be good. So Steve rolls a 6-5, obviously forced to come in with a 6, and he wants to run. He's close enough in the race. 2-1 for Mochi, bad roll for him. Six-3 brings him in, getting closer for Steve. Mochi's still a favorite, being ahead in the race. But Steve is close if he can roll a double, like a large set. So Steve rolls a 6-2. Now he's ahead. 2-1 for Mochi, his worst roll. Now, Steve is looking at redoubling. Turns out to be a small, no redouble. So what are the things you want to look at when redoubling in these types of positions? Of course, you want to look at the race. So Steve has 4 pip lead in the race, but the effective pip count is 2.1. That takes into consideration the wastage. It's a very comfortable take, and Mochi takes. So now, see who rolls better dice. Now with the 4 cube, it gets interesting, because if Mochi rolls big to turn it around, makes it 8, the winner gets 8 points. That's more than half of the goal of 15 points in a 15-point match, which this is. So 5-2, Steve bears off 2 checkers. 5-1. You may have noticed some of the unique things about this Earth board. It's a beautiful wood, a pleasure to play on. The rack where you stack the checkers is actually detached, so it fits inside the board, so that makes the board a little bit more compact, makes it easier to carry. Additionally, it lacks a handle. It's closed by magnets, so that makes it a little bit smaller and ideal. It is available on the Backgammon Galaxy store. I'll put a link to it. I've seen these in person. They're really nice to play on. One of the nice things I like is you can change the surface inlays like the other FM Gammon boards, which is the manufacturer of this board. Steve rolls a great 6-5. So now he has a commanding position. Mochi's going to need a big set. What is it? It's a 4-1. Nope, he resigns. So Steve's lead increases to 7-2. So Steve is at the sensitive 8 away score, and Mochi is at 13 away. When your away score is an even value, or especially an even value that is a value of the cube, it's very sensitive. So for example, if Mochi doubles and Steve redoubles to 4 and wins a redoubled gammon, he wins the match with perfect efficiency. That's what makes these scores sensitive. Steve rolls the best opening roll, which is a 3-1 to make him a strong favorite, but Mochi rolls the best reply to that, which is a double 6, and now Mochi is the favorite. So now Steve rolls a 3-2. So what happens here is things get a little bit awkward when you roll an early double 6, because it's going to be hard to break the 18 points, so he can slot in front of it, and that's what he does. The slot and split was a little bit better, but they're close. 5-3, so that's a good roll for Mochi to break the point. He does have a good lead in the race. This is the wrong idea. You're ahead big in the race, and this is a perfect opportunity to hit, break that anchor, and you leave a 3-shot, which is duplicated to come in, as opposed to leaving on the 18 where he would have good 6s from the bar. And he has a blot on the board, but he rolls a great double 3, comes in, hits, and makes his 3-point board. That's a great roll for Steve. Now it's close to a 50-50 game. Looks like they dropped the die. He went to pick it up. 6-3 for Mochi, comes in and comes out. Mochi is still ahead in the race by virtue of having 1 checker back to 3. So now he's just trying to escape. So Steve rolls a 6-1, slots his bar point. Now 5-3, he just comes home safely. He's just trying to maintain his lead in the race, trying to creep up to a double. 6-4 for Steve. So he can make his 2-point. That's basically tied with bringing 2 down. Now, Mochi, is he looking to double? Looks like it's a small double. He does have a commanding lead in the race, but he only has a 1-point board versus a 4-point board, so Steve's a big favorite in a potential hitting exchange. Mochi has no checkers back, but Steve has 3 checkers back. 2 of them are glued, anchored on the 24-point. This is a very small double on XG. Small double on the plus analysis. So 6-1, plays 2 to his bar point. Now he has a better spare distribution. 4-1, that's a great roll for Steve. He makes his golden point, the 20-point anchor, and retains a goalkeeper to protect the back of Mochi's board. So now Mochi rolls a 3-1. So Mochi does want to clear his midpoint soon. He can play 13-9. That gives Steve 4s, 5-3, and 6-2 to hit. That's 15 numbers. But what did he play? 7-3. That only gives him 12 numbers. So that's a little bit safer. Plus, if he's missed, he has those flexible distribution of spares to cover it. 6-2 also would leave that. Oh, so he played the 6-3, and yeah, now he played like that. 6-2 would be equally flexible, if not more, but it goes a little too deep. So Steve does roll a 5-3, which would have hit the other way, and he can play on his side, just slotting the next point, the 3-point, and coming in, or he can bring 2 down. Now Mochi's looking, now it's a small no double. On the initial analysis, we'll look at the plus analysis. It's a small no double. He does have a 14-pip lead in the race, but he has to have that blot. So now he has a 4-1. So that's the 8-3. So this is another one of those purity versus distribution. You can make the deeper point, which is less pure, like this, by making the 2-point and have a nice distribution of spares on his 6, 7, and 8 points. Alternatively, he can play 8-3 like this, making the purer point, the 3-point rather than the 2-point, but leaving an awkward distribution of spares, no spare on the 8-point, and too many checkers on the 6-point. Turns out to be a small error, but that's what I would have done myself. 6-1. So Steve comes in. It's really hard for me to decide on those purity versus distribution plays. So now that Steve Mochi has made his board, made another point in the board, he is looking at possibly doubling. It's still a small no double. He's only ahead by 12 pips in the race, and that's barely enough. If it were just a straight race, but Steve has a lot of contact value. So he rolls a 5-2, just brings 1 in. (3-2) for Steve. He makes his board. Now he's ready to hit a shot. Mochi's going to have to be more careful. 6-3. So something's got to give here. He's got to leave a shot. My friend John Rockwell says showtime, because you have to leave a shot here. So what is he going to do? He can clear his midpoint, and that does leave the direct shot. Plus it leaves fives and 4-1 as well as 6-3. So that's 15 numbers. This one will minimize shots. That's what he does. Steve's looking for a 2 to hit. Doesn't get it. He gets a 6-5. So he plays on this side. Turns out to be quite an error, I guess, because of the blot in the board. He could have come out. Now, does Mochi have a double? So Mochi is ahead by 12 pips in the race. Of course, he's down big in the score, so he's going to have to be a little bit more aggressive, and that's what he's thinking of. Steve's looking at it, looks at the race. Just based on the race, it's a take, and Steve has more contact value. That's what makes it such a comfortable take, despite his large lead in the score. Because Steve has his 20 point, he's not losing a lot of gammons. You can see black wins 6.7% gammons, while white wins 5%. So they're very close. So he doesn't have to worry about that quite so much. Double 5, that's a great roll. So he's going to cover, and he can just bring everything in, or he can come down and make his ace point on head. Turns out this will win more gammons, interestingly. And he does find the right play. Now Steve rolls a 5-1. So he can break his board, but looks like XG wants him to run. Because of the 5-point board versus the 3-point board, it's better to just run. So 6-1. He makes the ace point on head. Good roll for Mochi. Now Steve's going to want to come in with a 5 or a 4. No, he dances with a 3-1. Now Mochi's going to want to try to make his 4 point. He can't do it. He rolls a 3-1. So not a good roll. He's going to have to play behind like that. Steve's on roll trying to come in with a 5 or a 4 this time. Gets it. He rolls a 4-3. He's forced to come in with the 4 and just clears from 6 to 3 with the 3. Another 3-1 for Mochi. So he can pick and pass, but he doesn't really want to do that. He just wants to play behind. Now Steve's looking for something good. Now with the 5-4, he can run one all the way, run the other one all the way, play 2 checkers off the 20 point. That's the pseudo double falcon. It's not, I guess, technically a double falcon because Mochi doesn't have any checkers to hit with, but it's a pseudo double falcon play, bringing 2 checkers out, keeping the 1 blot on the 21 point for contact value. It's not an anchor because it's a blot, but it's kind of a phantom anchor because it serves as an anchor blocking Mochi's Baron. Mochi doesn't have a lot of great rolls to point on head if he abandons his 20 point. So Mochi would have like a double 3s, which would be great, or 4-3, and then some pick and pass numbers, which will leave some indirect shots. Steve finds it. 3-1. He's going to have to pick and pass. So that leaves 5-2 and 4-3. 4 numbers for Steve. 11% chance of hitting. (6-5). He comes in and brings one down. Big lead in the race. Okay, good roll in part. There's some good, some bad. Brings in everything. Bears off a checker, saves the gammon, but Steve needs an ace to hit. That's what he's looking for. He gets it. Great roll for Steve. He hits with the 1 and just continues. So now Mochi has 1 checker. He cannot get gammon. Steve's going to have to see when he can redouble. 5-4, Mochi dances. Steve's still behind by 21 pips. So with that open 6 point, he still has a little bit of work to do. Now the 6-1 here, what is he going to do? So Steve wants to make his 6 point, or at least threaten to make it. So what are the things that he can do? He can come down. He can come down with the 15 to the 9 and make the 9 point. I don't think that's on XG's radar. So 13-12 is the play that brings one down to bear on the 6 point. And then XG wants him to play 10-4 and safety that blot. Yeah, this is a reasonable play. Gives him a lot of chances to make the point. Now Mochi dances. Now Steve's looking at redoubling. So what are his chances of making the 6 point? Well, he can make it with a 6-4, 6-3, 4-3, and also double threes. So that's 7 numbers. Double 6 is also a good number for Steve, so that's 8 numbers. He is behind 14 in the race. So if Mochi comes in with a quick 6, Mochi will have a lot of cube leverage, especially at this sensitive score. So Steve owns the 2 cube at an 8-away score. So if he redoubles to 4 and Mochi redoubles to 8 later, the cube is dead. So that's an important consideration to think about, because Steve will not have any value of owning the cube. And that's important when you take a cube or you give a cube and you think about it for later. It's very different in a match versus a money game. In particular when the cubes get to higher values like 4 and 8 rather than just an initial cube. So Mochi does correctly take. Steve's trying to close his board. Double 1, can't do it. He's just going to have to play 9-5. That will leave him a safe double 6 next should Mochi dance. So he's thinking of leaving it slotted. That's aggressive. And Mochi's looking at possibly redoubling here. He's thinking about it because of the score. If he wins a gammon on the 4 cube, he gets 8 points. So that will give him 10 points. He'll be ahead 5 away, 8 away. But if he dances, Steve will get 4 points with a win to get to the valuable 4 away score. 11 out of 15 is 4 away. In a match, you want to think about these things different from a money game. In a money game, the goal is to win as many points as possible. There's no maximum, there's no minimum. In a match, on the other hand, the goal is to get to a predetermined number of points, which is the match length, in this case 15. So you want to get to 15 points. It doesn't matter if you get 15 or anything more, 16, 17, 18. That's called overage. You don't want the overage because you're getting points that were unnecessary. You're wasting it. So he correctly does not double, but he dances with a double 3. Now Steve's looking for a 6 or a 4 to cover. He gets it, the 6. And now with the 4, he can play 10 to 8 or he can play 3 to 1. The advantage of staying back on the 10 point is it helps on rolls like 6-4. You look at your large numbers to see how they play. Now here 6-4 would leave a blot. At the same time, you don't want 2 checkers dead on the ace point, which decreases the flexibility, especially the bear-off efficiency. When you have too many checkers on the ace point during a bear-off, it slows yourself down. So the plays are close, but those are the kinds of considerations. Mochi cannot roll, so he just presses his clock. Dice are cocked. Two, 1, and he just plays 8 to 6, and he can play continue to the 5 point or bear off a checker. So here, if he leaves it there, now 6-5, double 5s, and double 6s leave a shot. Whereas here, the 6-5 doesn't leave a shot, but double 5s and 6s do leave a shot. Yeah, 6-4 also leaves a shot, but not 5-4. The other way, 5-4 wouldn't have left a shot. Six-3, great roll for Steve. Bears off 2 checkers. Now, Steve rolls a 3-1. So, whenever you have these flat positions where you have 2 checkers on each of the points, there are different things you can do. This leaves you odd on the top, which is very awkward, because now double 4s, 5s, or 6s, and 6-5, 6-4, and 5-4 leave a shot. Doesn't get it. He rolls a 4-1. But those are the kinds of things you want to think about when you're bearing off like that. Mochi dances again. Steve's looking to take a commanding lead in this match. 6-2, that's a great roll because it bears off a checker on the highest point and moves the spare to the second highest remaining point. That gives him more safety. So Mochi comes in. He's likely to save the gammon. And Steve's, actually he's already saved the gammon because he's taking the checker off. Double 4, that seals it for Steve. I did an interview with Mochi, and he told me during the interview that Steve was one of the players that mentored him when he was learning and when he was playing in Los Angeles. Steve plays in Los Angeles, lives in Los Angeles where I do, and we play together all the time. Don't play with Mochi very often at all, but do communicate with him sometimes on Facebook. I did proofread his new book, Backgammon Masterclass, and he proofread my book on backgame strategies, which is now available. So double 3, make the board. That's nice. He makes the rack, the 4, 5, and 6 point, turned by Bill Roberti. So now double 6. So he makes his 18 point. That's great because it kind of renders the rack relatively useless for the moment, and he's odd on the other points, so he can't make another point without leaving another blot. So I think he'll just have to safety the other 2 blots behind. And that's what he does. He did take the racing lead. Now 2-1 for Steve. So he leaves a blot as bait because Mochi has 2 blots on his board and 1 on the outside. Now Mochi rolls a 2-1. He just safeties everything. Could have also just played 13 to 10. Three-two for Steve. Just increases his board strength. Leave this lap blot because Mochi has 2 blots on his board. Now Mochi has a double 2 to play. This is interesting because he can hit and cover, but that would leave 2 blots on the outside. He can do that, but then what? This is something interesting, similar to a backgame position from his book, where he has a double 2 to play, and he can play from his midpoint to his 5 point, but it's better to just clear all 3 from the midpoint, which is what's best here. He's going to have bad 6s. If he brings down one down, or all 3 down from the midpoint, he will have some good 6s next. So he'll have a good 6-1 and 6-3. But then 6-4 he'll also be able to play safely. And the nice thing is it does bear on the 5 point, which is open, and it's not blocked by 6s from the anchor on his 4 point. So this is what sometimes people call the Cinderella point. Now Steve rolls a double 1, so that's good. He can make that point, so that puts a lot more pressure on those 3 checkers Mochi has on his 11 point. 6-5. So now he kind of has to play like that. He's got to play safe. That's what he does. 5-1 for Steve. So now, if you look at Mochi's structure, it's very awkward. He has 6 checkers. That's way too many on his 6 points, and all the other points are stripped. He has a huge gap in his board, a blot in the board. Steve can take a lot of risks and leave these shots. 6-4. So again, Mochi's going to have to play safe. Steve can be aggressive here. 4-3 for Steve. So he can slot and make his 10 point, but it's a little better to just play 13 to 6. Gives him a little bit more flexibility to play on the next turn. Now he's stripped everywhere. This is called a brittle position. Okay, 4-3 for Mochi. Look at that. XG wants him to just clear the 11 point. That's a hard one to find. I wouldn't have done that at all. I would have done either Mochi's play or bring 6-2 and 4-1. Now 4-1 for Steve. He sees that Mochi has 2 blots in his board. So he just breaks his 10 point. 4-2 for Mochi. He could hit with a 2, but then he'd be leaving 2 blots. He just has to play safe like that. 6-1 for Steve. Good roll. He's able to make his board. Now, whoever rolls a 6 first is in trouble. Well, double 4 is a good roll. So he does that, and then he can come down to the 10 point, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants to do this. Double 2s play bad for him if Steve's able to retain both the midpoint and the 20 point. 5-1. So that's a simple play. Turns out to be a blunder. Wow. Because of that blot on the board. 5-4. It looks like Mochi had a small double, but he plays the 5-4. Now 6-4 for Steve. Just comes down. That's a nice play. You don't need to break the midpoint. 6-1. There you go. Now he's duplicating the 2s. The 6 is forced, 14 to 8, and he plays 8 to 7 to leave Steve with 2s on both. So he can hit 20 to 18 with a 2 or 13 to 11 with a 2. So it's duplicated, fewer numbers. So now Steve does roll a 5-2, so he can hit. He's going to hit that outer checker and bring one in to give a direct covering 3. Mochi dances. So now Steve has a good shot at going for a gammon. So he's too good to double here. In particular because he's at the sensitive 4-way score. So Steve's winning a lot of gammons here. Look at that, 32% gammons. If he doubles and wins a doubled gammon, he wins the match with perfect efficiency. He needs 15 points. He gets exactly 15 points. That de-incentivizes Mochi to take at this score. But if he just wins a undoubled gammon, he gets to the valuable 2-away score. And that's what he does, 6-5. He makes his board. Now he's trying to hit a second checker, which would really increase his gammon chances. 5-3. So I'm just going to come up with the 3 and bring the 5 down. Now Steve rolls a 6-2. He can stay back and play deep into the board, hoping to roll a 2 to hit another checker. He doesn't get it. He rolls a double 5. So 1, 2, and he's going to have to clear his 6 point. Now he's odd on his top. Odd even is what I call it. Odd on the highest point, even on the second highest point. Some awkward numbers like 6-5, 6-4, 5-4, double 4s, 5s, or 6s. That's 9 numbers. So a quarter of the numbers will leave a shot. However, Mochi does have an open 5 point. He misses. He doesn't leave a shot. He rolls a 4-2. Steve's trying to get a gammon here. 3-2. He has too many checkers on his ace point. Steve has nothing to lose by rolling on. 4 checkers off with a double 1. Nice roll. The dice have to cooperate, and they're starting to. 2-1. Bad roll for Mochi. Steve's going to need maybe another double or some big numbers. That one is cocked. One die didn't get through the baffle box, so he rolls again. 6-5, good roll. Bears off 2 checkers off the highest point. Mochi's going to need to come in. Double 1. He doesn't get a crossover, and he gets only 4 pips. Now Steve's looking for a double. 5-4. He doesn't get it. Double 2 for Mochi, brings 1 in. Now Steve's going to need a double and Mochi to miss. Or Mochi can roll a double 5. 4-3. So he comes in. Nothing misses. Double 5 will bear off a checker. Steve's going to need double 2s or better. 5 numbers to win the gammon. No, he gets a 6-4. So he gets to 13 points. Steve is at 2 away. And Mochi has 2 points, 13 away. So Steve has a huge commanding lead at 2 away, 13 away. We'll stop this video at this point and do the rest of the match in part 3. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for joining me. Please like and subscribe and you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Please let me know what you think in the comments below and what you'd like to see in future videos, and I'll work on that. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep rolling your dice.